Yo, what is going on, people? Welcome back to another Carolina Country Boy Classic. Today we're going to be doing a video on something that I've used for years on the river, and it's a tried and true for me. It's caught me some really big bass, and when fish are trying to kill something, man, they love a good popper. So that's what we're going to be making this video on today, is a topwater popper. It's the most versatile bait that you can throw as far as topwater goes. So I'm going to give you all my knowledge in this video about this bait, and yeah, stay tuned, guys.
Don't need your protection, don't need no shield. Now watch me bleed.
Alright guys, so what is a popper? Okay, basically what a popper is a topwater you throw on a topwater rod, and basically what it has is a cup on the top of the bill, and what that's going to do is that's going to grab water as you pull it forward or pull it back to you. You can skip it, you can make it skit and spit water, you can pop it, you can make it chug. There's all kinds of things you can do with a popper that make it so versatile. But you know, the main thing about a topwater you can't do with other topwaters is you can go as slow or as fast as you'd like. Okay, this thing is working even when you're not working it, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a jerk bait in that sense. But another thing that they usually come with is a feathered treble hook. I actually pulled the feathers off of this because I just think it was too much for when I was fishing. Now there are certain situations where I will keep the feathered treble hook on, but for the most part I have it taken off. The next thing is, what does this thing mimic? Okay, if you're looking at this popper, this thing is maybe 3 to 4 inches max. Okay, I'm not trying to mimic some big, you know, gizzard shad or anything crazy on top of the water. I'm just trying to mimic something called a threadfin shad. Some people, you know, in Alabama call them yellowtails, but around here we just call them threadfin shad, and they kind of have a, you know, bluish yellow back on them, and they shine a lot, and they usually school up on top of the water. They're not usually on the bottom like gizzards are. So that's what we're basically mimicking, is those gizzards, or not gizzard shad, threadfin shad on the top of the water. It's supposed to mimic those 3 to 4 inches. They don't really grow any bigger than that. I've seen bigger ones that 99% of them are 3 to 4 inches long. So that's why I keep my topwater bait at 3 to 4 inches long, and that's why these are so effective. Another thing that it can mimic is bluegill. This is especially effective during the spawn when fish are on beds. I mean, and even just in like near laydowns or slower portions of the water where those bluegill are hanging out. I mean, if you have a lot of largemouth in your river, you know, throwing a popper that is a bluegill pattern popper above some of those fish will get reaction strikes. So that's another thing that it mimics. So what makes this thing very effective compared to other topwaters is you can slow down. Okay, you can pause, and that's what people don't realize, is when they put a topwater in their hand, they're thinking, oh yeah, I gotta work it on top of the water as fast as possible to get these fish to react. And me personally, I've had experience where I've done that. I've had so many followers come up to the boat. Sometimes those fish have to make a decision whether they want to eat that or not. And sometimes just having it pause there for a second gives them that extra time to want to do that. So another thing that I want to talk about is topwaters are primarily above the fish at all times. So you're able to pull things from large distances. So if this popper's right here, you might pull a bass over here or over here. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly under them. A lot of them are going to follow you up with those pops and those skits and whatever you're doing with the topwater. But this thing you can do so many varying cadences with. In my opinion, it is the 4x4 of topwaters. I mean, you can literally do anything you want with these topwaters. You know, if they're feeling a certain way, they're not hitting that cadence, then you can change that cadence, and you can slow down or you can speed up, one or the other. But the main thing is, it's a 3 to 4 inch bait fish profile, and it's going to get those bigger bites when those days are tougher than usual. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the best conditions to throw this in and the different seasons. Okay, so starting out, it doesn't matter what season it is, you always want medium to medium clear water. Okay, even clear water is great. You never want muddy chocolate milk water when you're fishing these topwaters, and that goes for just about anything. Buzz baits are an exception, but usually I'm not throwing a buzz bait. I don't have much experience with those, but I have heard that they are effective in those different conditions. But you do not want to throw a popper in those kind of conditions. It's not going to work very well for you, and I just suggest you stay away when that water's chocolate milk. Another thing that I'm looking for is calmer days. I'm not looking for a hurricane coming through. I'm not looking for a tropical storm. I'm looking for those calm days, kind of like today, where the wind ain't blowing too hard, and there's occasional clouds. And that's one thing about a river, guys. River is never textbook. Okay, I mean, you don't have to have perfect conditions for these things to work, but you do need a couple things. You do need clearer than average water. You do need to have a little bit of clarity in the water, which means there's not a lot of ripples on the top, so it's not covering up the top water. And this is another thing I want to mention about this bait, guys. This is a stealthy bait. So when you're fishing this bait, you need to be making as far of a cast as you possibly can, or you need to be behind some kind of structure, or you need to be not making much noise at all, because you will spook the fish, because you're fishing in very spooky conditions, if that makes sense. You're fishing in very silent conditions, if that makes sense. So that's the main thing you're looking for. Is just not necessarily like a overcast day with this barometric pressure. You really just need to look for, can I throw a popper in this water and will the fish see it? That's basically what you're thinking about before you go fishing with a popper. But the next thing I want to talk about is the different seasons that I throw this thing in. So let's start with summer, where we're at right now. Okay, I'm gonna fish in the beginning of the day, or in the later afternoon, which is probably after 5 o'clock. But there's no textbook about this. I've had big bites in the middle of the summer, at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. When the heat is at its as worst, I'm getting big bites on it. So there's no rhyme or reason to topwater fishing in a river, especially if you're fishing around current and you've got oxygen. Those fish don't really have a time frame where they're gonna bite better. I mean, just kind of depends on the behavior of the fish and what they're doing that day, but the river's never textbook, like I said. So in the summertime, I'm looking for those slack water areas. I'm looking for those areas that are around a lot of current, a lot of oxygen. I'm looking to throw it above eddies. I'm looking to throw it on all those different areas. But basically in the summer, you can't go wrong with a popper, because they're going to eat anything. Their metabolism is very high, through the roof. And there are occasional thread fins that come through the shoals. So make sure you tie that on if you want to catch them in the summer. But in the fall, which is the next season past summer, this is when a topwater is, hands down, the thing I will be throwing 80% of the time. When you think about the fall, you have to think about, those shad that have spawned throughout May and all that, they have now grown to that 2 to 3 inch, sometimes 4 inch range. And you have a lot of them in the river system at that time. So those smallmouth, largemouth, spotted bass, whatever lives in your river, are keyed in on those fish, because they're that perfect 3 to 4 inch bait fish profile, and they're like candy to them. They just eat it nonstop. So definitely throw it in the fall, as more than anything you will any time of the year. Definitely pick up a topwater and throw it in the fall. It's just hands down the best time to throw that kind of stuff. But like I said, the fall doesn't have to have any kind of particular conditions. I throw the popper all day during the fall, because I just know it's going to get those bigger than average bites. Okay, look for those areas. Like I said, you don't always have to be looking for those eddies in that time. You need to be looking for areas like maybe some islands, maybe some where the island, where this part of the river comes in and this part of the river comes in, you have like a little slack water island. Those are good areas to target. Anywhere where you have grass is good areas to target. Laydowns are good areas to target. Eddies are good areas to target. There's really no wrong place to throw a popper in the fall. They're pretty much everywhere. The bait fish are running everywhere, so just get out there and throw a popper in the fall. So going into our next season, spring. You have to think about spring as one of the best times of the year to fish. You catch some big fish in the spring, guys, so definitely don't discount the popper during the spring. And in particular, the spring, when I like to throw it is when I have some clear water. Like I said, a lot of times in the spring you have that chocolate milk water or really muddy water. I'm not going to throw this thing much. But when I have those days where I know fish are getting on beds, or I know that the water's clear enough for me to throw it, that's when I'm going to pick up a popper. And there's so many things about a popper that you can talk about, but what a popper can basically do is it can piss off a bed fish. You don't even have to be on their bed. You can be above their bed, and be pissing these fish off. So if you're fishing around beds and you know there's beds around there, throw the popper, guys. Give it a shot. I've had some of my biggest fish caught on a popper right over some of these fish's beds. And another little sneaky spot you can throw a popper or any kind of topwater during the spring, whether that be pre-spawn or post-spawn, those transition zones. So if you know an eddy or some slack water or just an area where you've been catching some pre-spawn fish or post-spawn fish, try the popper, guys. That place is a great place to throw a popper because you can slow down, you can work that thing really, really slow, or you can speed it up. It's just such a great place to throw a popper in the spring. But that's my season coverage. I'm not going to throw this thing in the wintertime, simply because it's cold and the fish, they'll hit stuff on top of the water, but it's just not something I'm willing to throw that late in the year. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the varying cadences of the popper, the technique you're going to use to fish this thing. So like I said, all of them have like a cup or a bill on them that you're going to be pushing water with. But what you want to do is you want to tie this with a loop knot. Okay, you want to be able to give this popper as much free movement as possible on top of the water. And what I like to do starting out is I'll be about medium fast speed. Okay, I'll throw it out there, whether that be at an eddy, lay down, whatever, and I'll start as soon as it hits the water. You need to be popping that thing. Okay, even if you've got a bird's nest or something, you throw it out there, you get bird's nest, just pull the line. Okay, trust me, pull the line. Don't let it sit there without popping it once. Okay, once you pop it once, you'll get some of those bites right on the first pop. A lot of your big bites come on the first pop too. So just make sure you pop it as soon as it hits the water, because you'll miss out on bites if you don't. Another thing I want to mention is when I'm medium fast working it, I'm looking to see how the fish are reacting. So if I get a strike on the top water and they miss it, might want to slow down just a tad. Not too much, but just a tad to where they can get the popper a lot easier. And another thing you got to think about when you're fishing a popper is bass, they don't like irregular action. They like a consistent pattern speed, because if they're trying to track that top water coming through the top of the water, you're more likely to have them miss if you're using an irregular action. So if you have pop, 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 I mean, they're going to hit it, and they may get it 9 times out of 10, but just keep that in mind, that if you're doing a lot of irregular action, you're going to get some reaction strikes out of that, but you might miss the hookup because those fish might miss it altogether, because not all of them are skilled, and some of them are blind, guys. I've caught a lot of blind fish that don't always know where that popper's going, but that's the main thing, is vary your cadences. But I like to start out medium fast, and I like to, do a lot of different things. But another thing I want to talk about is walking the dog with a popper. Yes, you can walk the popper. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about it, and what I like to do when I get on a really good popper bite is I throw it out, I'll pop it once or twice, maybe 3 times if I know I'm in a good area, and then as soon as I let it sit for that third pop, what I'll do is I'll pick up that rod a little bit from that 45, and I'll just start giving the line slack, kind of like a spook. And you're just going to walk this thing back to you, and it's going to spit water. And what that looks like, if you have something following that bait up to you those first 3 pops, if you start walking it back like that, oh my gosh, it's like 9 times out of 10 those fish are going to hit it, because they think that it's running from them. And that's the thing, that the pops get the attention, and the skidding back to the boat is what gets the bites. I've had so many big bites doing that that I can't even talk about it in this video. But that's basically what you want to be doing with, as far as the technique goes with this. You don't want to be working it way too fast. You really want to slow down and try a bunch of different things. But those things are the things that work for me. So go ahead and try them. All right, so next we're going to talk about the kind of river features you're looking for. Obviously each season is different, and I talked about those, but you're looking for areas that you would look for in a river that have fish. I mean, it's really common sense, but you don't want to be throwing this popper somewhere in some fast moving water, unless you're fishing for striper. I know you got some striper guys out there that do that in front of the spillways and stuff like that. But I'm talking about river bass. I'm talking about black bass species. You're looking to try to fish these things in some slack water where they can really sit and soak. Above shoals are really good. You might have some current, but above them can be really good, because you have a lot of fish that sit above the shoals too. A lot of people forget that one. But really just try to find the areas that have the fish. once you find the fish, throw a popper on them, then they're probably going to see it and they're probably going to hit it. But that's what I try to tell people about every bait is every bait is not really tailored to any kind of area. You just need to find the fish first. So I might be making a video in the future about where these fish hide in the river and really trying to dial in and break down where you guys should find these fish each time of the year. So that's basically what I'm looking for as far as river features. Just find the fish, guys. All right, guys, so getting into throwing this popper, you need to kind of understand what kind of gear you need to be throwing this on. So what I would start out with is some kind of topwater rod. I don't have one on me right now because all of my stuff is packed up for vacation, but I would start out with a 7-foot bait casting rod or spinning rod, whatever you prefer. I just prefer bait casting rod because I have a lot more control of the fish. A 7-foot medium fast, okay? Not a medium heavy, not a medium extra fast. I'm talking about just a medium fast, kind of like a jerk bait tapered rod. And that's going to allow you to work it without your wrist getting tired and also not rip the popper too hard and rip it out of the fish's mouth. That gives you a lot of control over the popper when you have that kind of rod taper. And the kind of line I'm going to be using is I would probably go with 20-pound braid. If you want to go lighter than that, that's fine. I think braid's very strong. And I'll probably go to a 12-pound monofilament leader. You want to keep this leader very short because you want it to be able to hide the braid part of it. So maybe like a 2 to 3 foot leader in front of that popper. That's going to allow the thing to float, and it's going to give it that action that you want. You don't want too long of a monofilament leader. It's not going to make sense. No point tying a braid to monofilament leader if the leader is going to be 10 feet long. So just try to keep the leader 2 to 3 feet long, sometimes 2 feet. That gives the popper the invisibility. Fish can see braid, so don't throw straight braid unless you're throwing a frog, which we're not talking about frogs in this video, but throw a monofilament leader on the back of that thing. Make sure you're confident in tying those connection knots, and you'll have some good luck with that. And as far as the reels go, guys, you want to look for something in the 7.1 to 1 gear ratio, something that is not too fast but not too slow. I love that gear ratio range for just about every technique except for a few. Now if you got a spinning rod or spinning reel, a 5 and a 6 will work. You just might not be able to work it as fast as say somebody with an 8 or a 7 would. So just keep that in mind when you're picking your gear out for this kind of technique. All right, guys, so lastly, I want to talk about some of the common mistakes that people make when fishing a popper. Number one is they don't give it enough time, okay? And what I mean by that is they pick it up for a short amount of time and they just put it down. And the problem with that is a popper is the most versatile. Like I said, it's a 4x4 of topwaters. If I'm having a really bad day fishing and I think they'll hit a topwater, I'm going to pull out a popper first because 9 times out of 10, I can cover all different types of topwaters with this one topwater. So really think about, slowing down, speeding up, trying a bunch of different things before you just throw this thing down, because a lot of times they are biting the popper, you're just not working it properly. And another thing that you want to think about in a river system is you need to be thinking about how that popper is going to come down. Okay, so you never want to throw it downriver. That don't look natural, okay? You can get bites like that, but 9 times out of 10, those fish are positioned looking upstream. Okay, so if you can cast at a 45 going upstream, or you can cast to an eddy and you're directly behind it, that's what I've noticed works well for me. But the 45, if you're beside a shoal line and you can hit the top and the bottom side of the shoal line, that's freaking money when you're casting in the river current. I'm not talking about laydowns or nothing like that. There's no specific angle you need for that. But when you're fishing in current, current will position the fish, which means it'll position where their head is facing. So make sure that you're aware of that. Also, when you're pulling the topwater back to you, when the current is coming down and your popper's coming back up to you, you have a lot of drag in the water, and it kills the action, in my opinion. You don't get as much loose action with a popper. So just be careful how you're casting this thing and really learn how these things work in the current. Another thing I want to mention is a lot of people think you can throw a 5 to 6 inch popper. We're not trying to throw saltwater poppers for tarpon and stuff like that. So like I said, keep it in that 3 to 4 inch range. You do not want to be exceeding that because you're trying to mimic those threadfin shad. And it's very important, like I said, that you have the right line equipped. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up with some experience that I've had with this, just to kind of back up everything that I've said. We'll start out with the summertime. Last year, I was fishing out on the river last summer. I did a float trip, a 13-mile float trip. It had a ton of different shoals, a ton of different laydowns, and I ended up catching, you know, a nice 4 or 5 pound largemouth and a nice 3.5 pound smallmouth, just by using the popper and doing what I just mentioned in this video. That was very successful for me in the summer, and I'll leave a picture up right here that you can see. And then in the fall of the same year, I was able to go out and catch, golly, it was so great. I caught 2 4-pounders in a day, and then I went out the next day and I caught a 5-pounder. And these were all, you know, 20+ inch fish that I was catching on the popper, doing what I just mentioned in this video. And I'll also leave pictures right here for you to see, which I'm not just bullshitting you. And this previous spring, I tried the popper a little bit, and I was able to get so many big bites. And let me tell you, I had an area where these fish are really bedding good, and I think I caught 3 big bass this year on a popper in the spring. So never discount the ability to catch big fish on a small topwater like that. And I'll leave the pictures to the spring fish right here. So yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope I went in depth enough for everything and you didn't lose attention to this video, because it's something that I've been wanting to make for a while. Just like the drop shot video, really like that technique. Is very slept on, and so is the popper, guys. So make sure you give us a try at your local river or a lake or wherever you decide to throw this thing, and let me know how you do. If you like the video, like it. If you want to see more of this content, please subscribe. I'm working on making more of this content. And yeah, guys, keep it country, and I'll keep it Carolina. We'll see you in the next one.